Will it tell us on air?
I think it just did.
Sweet.
That we're on air.
It's been a while.
Hey guys, it's the Infinite Green guys here. It's been a while since we've been on air.
It is.
I think it was late last summer that we had our last green talk, and I thought we'd get started again with some green talks. And today we're going to be talking about going to the cloud, taking your contact center to the cloud, pros, cons, benefits, pitfalls, what to avoid, how to take advantage of it, etc. I am Scott McIntyre. I am chief instigator and co-owner here at Infinite Green. I have my business partner. I'll let you introduce yourself.
John Bloom. Hey, everyone.
He's the chief illuminator. He illuminates things.
It's kind of the
On
five
his,
head.
on his five head as well. So thanks for joining us. Another live broadcast. These are always fun to do, tough to prepare for, just to make sure we have relevant content for you. And, goals that we have for today is, not talking industry speak. So firm believers in plain talk, trying to make it real for everybody.
Did you just say that?
I did. I apologize.
That's all right.
But really speaking plain talk around these capabilities, what they do, what they don't do. We're not big proponents of the canned, the webinar topics and process. So this is real talk from us, our perspective on the industry, and we're going to be talking about cloud capabilities. So with that, we'll get started. Hopefully not take the whole hour, but we'll see how long it takes. No set time. So I thought we'd start with an industry overview of cloud. And we're specifically talking about contact center capabilities here. So there's a lot of cloud services on the market these days. I just read an article the other day that talked about how to set up and run an entire company on cloud-based services and not have any boxes or any kind of servers, applications, local applications. That there are so many applications out there today from a cloud perspective. You can open up your browser, run your HR department, your marketing department, you name it. So we're going to be talking a little bit about contact center specific. So from a pure cloud perspective, we've been mainly following three large providers. The first is InContact. I think they're the most tried and true. They've been in the market 10 years-ish.
Plus, yeah.
Another one is Five9, which started as a dialer company, but they've been in the market for a good 8 years now. It's pretty tried and true from a cloud perspective. And then a newer player, Interactive Intelligence, has a new pure cloud tool that we saw the other week, which we're pretty impressed with. So from an enterprise contact center platform perspective, those are the big three.
So let me ask you a question on that. Why do we, of course I know this answer, but why do we have competing offers in the cloud if the cloud is kind of the place where most companies are moving towards or trying to move towards because of the reasons that we're going to talk about in a little bit? But why do we have competition that we go and partner with as Infinite Green?
Well, I think they offer different things,
Yeah.
and they definitely don't fit. Some people have certain capabilities already in their organization that they might want to integrate to versus taking on and switching everything over.
Right.
Some are better unified communications platforms or collaboration platforms. Some are strictly just contact center specific.
Yeah.
And some blend. So not every capability fits with every organization. And I think what we like to do is try to find the right fit, the right capability that matches, what needs there are for a specific company.
Yeah, I think
the capability is a little different.
That's really important, right? Because one size doesn't fit all. And I think the thing that, we really recognize is, to your point, Scott, companies and our clients are on a different step in the journey, whether they've heard about it and they're just trying to figure out what to do about it, how to get their organizations kind of tuned around it. And I know we're going to talk about a few of those things in a minute, but the reason why we have competing offers is because we need the variability. We need the variability of that because our clients are all over the place, right? And everyone kind of hears that term cloud, and I think it's an overused term, but it's an understood term right now. So hopefully we can give a little bit of clarity to that from our perspective, and call us out on it if it's not what's true.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about premise-based capabilities versus hosted versus cloud in a second. Just wanted to wrap up the players in the industry with another couple of ideas. There's smaller players in the market that don't have a complete set, what I would call a complete set of enterprise capabilities for contact center. One is 8x8.
Oh, yeah.
They're starting to expand a little bit. LiveOps has an offering that blends into some home agent type of capabilities. That's where they started. There's also small ones like Uma, Grasshopper, RingCentral that offer small business type of contact center capabilities, but don't have a full suite of enterprise QA, WFM, WFO, et cetera.
We just heard about what, Rayvon? Was it Rayvon this week?
Yeah, Rayvon's another one. Yeah.
Volt Delta. I mean, again, local, regional, national, international, kind of all over the board.
But for the purposes of this discussion, I think we're going to be focusing more on the heavy hitters, enterprise levels.
Yeah.
And if you look at the growth curve that you've seen in the industry, and I've been watching Avaya trending. They're trending down from a growth perspective. They're shrinking. Cisco is tough to tell because when Cisco's call center platform, they have so many different other offers. It's tough to tell if they're shrinking in the market in the contact center space.
Yeah.
But these other players, these cloud-based players, I saw a stat the other day, 25% of all contact centers, enterprise contact centers, will be cloud by 2020. So definitely the market's moving that direction, and these companies are growing 30% plus a year in terms of users. So the growth is definitely in the cloud space. There's a lot of reasons that we're going to get into. So let's shift gears a little bit to this whole concept, and this is very confusing for a lot of companies that we talk to. Premise-based versus hosted versus what I would define as pure cloud.
Yep.
And obviously, premise is just what it is. You have this big box in the closet. You put cards and hardware in there to build capacity. It's the very traditional view of all kinds of capabilities, including voice.
And it's usually single focus too, right? So
Yeah.
typically, right? So if you have a phone switch, like this phone, right? You have a phone switch, you support that phone switch for calls.
Yep.
You may have another,
You might have
call this your email server.
a
right?
media
A media
server,
server, and you'd have that for your email, and something else for chat, and something else for.
I like the props.
I mean, it's pretty good. It's our cloud props.
But those integrations are expensive.
Right, but you'd have to buy each one of those separately.
Yes.
You'd have a different contract. You'd have a different.
Exactly.
But that's, again, those are things that you as an IT organization or business organization can manage, and you buy the box, you buy the software on the box, and you figure out how to work with it, and that's what you do. That's the traditional call center or contact center that we've grown up with.
So these are great props. So we didn't script this out. This is just on the fly kind of stuff. So hosted, we've heard this term hosted a lot. And really what hosted is you take all those same capabilities that John said, right? All your media servers, your ACD platform, and you push them out to some other location, right? That could be a Verizon or a Sprint or AT&T. They'll manage it for you. There's a bunch of virtual hosting capabilities. And what's great is you could scale and you pay one person to manage all those capabilities for you.
But you still own the stuff, right?
Sometimes you own the stuff. Sometimes they'll lease it to you. Sometimes you pay a monthly fee, but you're still involved in integrating all those separate capabilities. In other words, the capabilities didn't change. They just moved them to a location
so that's cloud.
that you don't have to.
That
No,
cloud?
that's hosted.
Oh, that's hosted. Okay.
That's hosted. So hosted can be interchanged with cloud in a lot of conversations, and be very careful when you're reading articles or looking at webinars. I attended one yesterday, and they kept on using hosted and cloud interchangeably, and they're not the same thing at all. It just means that you're having somebody else manage your stuff or their stuff, but it's the same capability, and you still have to pay for all the integrations, et cetera, et cetera. Now, transition that to cloud, and now you're saying, I'm going to take all these capabilities that I have, I'm actually going to layer them into one single service platform. Now there's no integrations to be had, right?
Because it's already integrated.
Right. So the pure cloud model is that you can turn up omni-channel, including social, web chat, virtual hold, all the channel capabilities, as well as WFM, WFO, so the QM, the performance management, and all of that outbound dialing, virtual IVR capabilities, speech-enabled IVRs, SMS, and you create one user, right? So I sign in and I create a user for John Bloom, and I set permissions, and he has access to some or all of these capabilities without you having to pay for all the integrations for a monthly cost.
So is it kind of like Microsoft Office when you consider, or Microsoft 365 when you log in?
It is just like that. Yep.
You get Excel, Access, PowerPoint, whatever else, right? You get that all from one login. But isn't that more like a platform though? Because now you're not talking about, I just need call routing capability. And so how should people think about that, right? Do you have to buy everything when you're buying a platform like that or a cloud platform, or can you turn on or off some of those features?
Yeah,
and pay for what you use.
Yeah, and that's where some of the platforms are a little different. So some have it where it's a very simple pricing, where you might get a collaboration for X dollars, and you get anything you want call center for $99 a month per user.
Right now.
Other companies have it where you get ACD and IVR and multimedia routing as a package, and then if you want WFO, that gets plugged in. If you want scheduling and forecasting, that's a plug-in for additional cost. So, and I think that's why we like having multiple platforms available to us and that we partner with, because everyone approaches it a little bit differently. But to your point, it is an on-demand type of service. The headache that it relieves for you is all the integrations that you might have to pay for.
Yeah.
Multiple user administration, that's all gone. You can flex up and flex down, so you don't have to build to your peak capacity. Peak capacity is whatever you want to make it.
So for companies like retail that have a huge push in the fall for prior to holiday season, right? Because they have this big support need, and that's a big portion of their revenue. And then they ramp down in, January, February, March, because that's the new season and whatever, it's after the holiday bust, right? So you can actually consider these at a license level too, like the cloud, right? Is if I need more people at a certain time because of a situation, I can ramp that up without adding any of these capabilities. They're already there, or components of them, right? You could turn on and off as you want them, like surveys, right? Surveys might be something, or outbound dialing, or something like that, and then turn it off for the rest of the year, but just turn it on when you need it.
Yeah, exactly. And so getting back to your pay for what you use, you truly pay for what you use.
Yeah.
So if you have a user, and we run into this with clients all the time, that, let's say they have a big spike around holiday and they add a couple hundred users. As soon as you inactivate those users, you can actually leave them in the system in perpetuity and not pay for them, as long as there's no call volume.
So you don't have to reset them up every time.
So you don't have to reset them up.
But if they don't take a call or use the system, then you don't pay for them.
Then you don't pay for them.
That's brilliant.
It is a very simple, easy to consume capability. I think that's why we promote it.
Yeah.
There are some challenges to the model, which we'll talk about a little bit. But for the most part, the benefits and features of these platforms in terms of flexibility, speed of change, ease of administration, is a lot better than the premise-based counterparts that you've spent years understanding, whether it's the Cisco call manager platform or CMS on Avaya. You name your software that's very complex to use, and this makes it easy, and it kind of switches the level of who maintains the system to a business user from an IT user. So there's benefits.
Are we going to talk about that from a upgrade, software version, those kind of things? Because I think those are things like, as you and I grew up right in the premise-based environment in big companies. And we were responsible for the budgets for a lot of these things, right? So having to, and I have a horror story of spending $1.5 million on an outbound dialer, and I won't name the company, and I could never get the version up to speed with the rest of our environment so that I could actually leverage the outbound dialer to make outbound sales calls or outbound notification calls or whatever. And the main reason was we weren't on the same version from an ACD or from a call routing perspective, and it wasn't compatible with the inbound as well as the outbound, because we always wanted that experience to be seamless for the customer around, hey, if I call out to you and you want to talk to somebody live, you should be able to tie back into the agents that we have available. We could never get that handshake to work. So
there's the integration that cost $1 million, not necessarily the product itself. It was the integration time.
Yeah, don't tell anybody that I spent that much money and didn't get any work, because that's not part of that resume thing that you always going to talk to people about. But anyway,
typically no.
But it was a good learning lesson, and part of the gray hair that I have in my head because of it. But so that's one of the things, right? So but in the cloud, if we think about the cloud, talk about InContact, Five9's, Interactive Intelligence, like the bigger players in the cloud space, they manage that for you, right? Because it's browser based, right? once you log in, if they decide that they're going to push new features, new code, new security patches, whatever, like what we would typically see within Microsoft Office, right, or Microsoft 365, the next time you log in, basically says, hey, just so you know, new features are available and here's the info on it, right? That's as easy as it is from a cloud perspective.
Yeah, and there really is no box management anymore. So release scheduling, testing, even building those integrations. I mean, you could spend 3 months testing the integration before pushing it live. What's great about Pure Cloud Tools is that, and that's the same for hosted too. So again, when you move your stuff into somebody else's environment, that integration point still has, and that handshake still has to happen. Now you might be paying somebody else to manage it, but that cost is baked into the cost of hosting.
So you'd still have to pay for software updates, maintenance fees, hosting fees, so that somebody else kind of manages it, but it might be considered different than maybe a traditional way of accounting for it, where you depreciate the hardware or you depreciate some of that labor cost and as an internal.
Yeah, you'd see a bill. So depending on the hosting environment, the hosting company, how they do it, you'd see a bill, right? They might make it really easy and put it in one little bundled price per user for you. But they're paying for all those integrations all the time to integrate it, all the capabilities, all the capacity. That's still being managed just by somebody else. So you get rid of one headache when you go to hosted, right? The headache of, I don't want to touch the boxes anymore. I'll let somebody else do that. But somebody else still has to run the upgrades, tell you when the upgrades are going to happen.
Make sure it works.
You have to load local software potentially, et cetera, depending on the solution. So you bring up a good point about the economics. And this gets actually a lot of companies tripped up too. Is they're used to saying, hey, I've got $3 million of capital allocated for call center improvements this year. Okay, so if I want to move to the cloud, what do I do with that $3 million of capital? Well, in a
so that's
cloud
$3 million of hard cash, right? That you want to allocate dollars towards. That you're typically, as a finance department and big company or company department or company perspective, you want to depreciate that over time, right? Typically, so you want to be able to have some kind of
typically it's 5 years, something like that.
3 to 5 years, right, or whatever that hardware. But I think where you're going is, so you wouldn't have that necessarily in a cloud model. In a hosted model, you would. You'd still be able to do that potentially.
50-50, some yes, some no.
So is it fair to say that, and I know we spend a lot of time on this, so not even to lead the witness a little bit here, but companies that don't understand how to move their traditional accounting for premise-based equipment and contact centers in specifically, right? And move that into the cloud that's one of the hardest things we get people, because I think most of the leaders that we talk to, they know they need to move into the cloud, and because of I think we're talking about how nimble it is to do that, right? And the capabilities are, back to your point about the platform, right? It's more than just your call routing, right? But, I think getting to that point is, how do you build the right financial model so you can start having those conversations, or so that parallel path while you're working on, wow, I really need these capabilities. How do I get the finance teams to kind of understand and help, their business partners, because they want to do that too, right? Is they're there for decision support and financial support. But I think we see our biggest challenge from an organization perspective and from a IT and business perspective and accounting perspective in, how do you start that story, and how do you change the way that you fund that $3 million worth of allocated hard dollars so that you get the benefit out of it, right? Yeah,
so we've worked with companies that are venture capital backed companies that have their capital, I'd say capital rich companies.
And they would traditionally look at premise based as being better, because if they're capital rich, they want to depreciate it, right? Okay.
They want to depreciate it. So they run into some trouble because, if they have capital to spend, they want to spend it.
Yeah.
And they say, well, the economics of spending capital versus expense. Well, I have the capital now.
Right.
And it might come from a different source, and it's not part of my operating budget, and I can separate it.
But it'll beef up the value of the company, which is typically what a VC would do, right?
And so, but when you switch to, the economics of a cloud, you're talking about a monthly bill. That's all expense, because you're not investing in any kind of equipment. And so depending on where your company is at, again, venture-backed companies are one that we've run into, that we've highlighted.
Yep.
Sometimes you have a budget for, like, let's say capital every year in your like a rhythm, right? Where the finance team has $3 million for you to go invest
CapEx.
in
CapEx is typically what they call
and
it. Right?
basically, what you have to say is, I don't want that $3 million, put it over in my expense line items,
OpEx.
in my OpEx line item. And the finance team goes, wait, no, I don't want to do that because it breaks the old model, right? So now you're into the change management.
So when does $3 million
switch.
not equal $3 million? Basically,
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're a company that has that rhythm, you're going to have to spend some time with the finance team saying, hey, next year, this is how I want to do it. That's hard to having the discussion now, because if you do it mid-year, when budgets are already set and that capital's been allocated, unless there's another place in the company that wants the $3 million in capital, it kind of ruins the model for them. So there's change management involved in the finance teams on this, depending on your situation. If you don't get capital and you want to run an expense-based model, what's really nice is, let's say you've invested and depreciated all your equipment over time.
Yeah.
Now you just have to basically layer in these month-to-month costs on your OpEx line items, and you start getting the benefit. And the typical benefits, we see is about a 20% decrease in. We have somebody wandering around the office.
That's Brian.
Hey, Brian. 20% decrease because of the operating benefits, because of the platform, and we'll get into the benefits side after we close out the economic side. But I think that really which covers that switch. Don't take it for granted on how hard that is. So make sure you start having conversations with your accounting and finance teams early.
So just a little bit of background right on us is we did what 40 plus of these cloud integrations last year. So we helped companies go from either cloud to cloud or premise to cloud or hosted to cloud. And we did 40 implementations from a technical perspective and from a business needs perspective. And one of the challenges with the providers or the suppliers that we talked about up front, whether it's the larger companies like Interactive Intelligence, InContact, and Five9s, and some of the more progressive cloud companies, and with some of the smaller ones, is they don't really employ, from a sales process perspective, there's not a lot of attention on how do I get your organization to change. So we just talked about financially, how do you get your organization to figure out how to move from CapEx to OpEx or blend that so that it makes sense for your budget. And that's one of the things that Scott and I have really paid attention to and helped companies through. Large companies, small companies, and companies that are in between and kind of looking at this as a 1 to 2 or 3 year kind of plan for them. They understand the benefits once we kind of get them clear of what their existing state is and how we're looking at that thing, the capabilities and the value forward. But it typically will come back at some point to that financial model. So if you're looking at the cloud as being, somewhere where you potentially want to start leveraging more content capabilities that are platform enabled versus going and buying each of your pieces parts, like what we've talked about, don't be surprised at the amount of time and energy it takes to really move your organization or move your leadership team, or if you're part of that leadership team, getting everyone else on board on how that works. And Scott and I and Infinite Green, we've spent a lot of time and energy helping companies build models around that.
I would say probably more time on that than actual requirements.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the change management aspect of that is everyone, I'll say generally, right? Generally speaking, everyone really wants to move to the cloud because of the benefits of the nimbleness and whatever, financial, whatever. But when you start looking at it from a traditional finance perspective and trying to depreciate cloud capabilities, typically as you would on a premise base, the model doesn't work. So there's some organizational and change management pieces that it's really important to have a good partner. Scott and I do this, and like I said, Infinite Green has been a part of that and helped companies through. And we're starting to understand the psyche of our clients much better up front, even before we've been in the house for a year or 2 years or whatever. But don't underestimate the amount of time it takes to get to that point. Right. And the typical providers out there won't have somebody that will sit down and help you with that. And that's the role that Scott and I typically will play with those clients. But anyway, sorry.
Absolutely.
No sidetrack there. I want to make sure that we're giving some of this value kind of storytelling a little bit in here because it is a big part of the change management, and everyone's like, yeah, I get that. We'll get everybody aligned, but really, when it comes right down to it, it's really hard to get people aligned on it.
It really is.
Or you're in a different place with it.
It is one of the most
And not in
exciting.
a bad way. Right?
I think it's one of the most exciting things in the last 5 years that's happened to
Mhm.
the industry. Frankly, in the past, you invested. You got one investment a year.
Yeah.
You try to make, okay, I'm going to have virtual hold on my IVR.
Yeah.
Press one
Hold
and
my place in
hold my
line,
place in
right.
line. I'll hang
Yeah.
up the phone. It'll dial you back. Right. That was something that if you had a Cisco ICM environment, let's say, and you
Yeah.
wanted to add that feature, it was $1 million. And you
Right.
blew your whole budget on that one capability in the IVR that you thought could save a few cents in telecom from the people hanging up, so you didn't have them waiting in the IVR. You'd have a few points in SAT because you had that option available to you. So it was a better customer experience, which is great. It was $1 million, and that's all you do. It takes 6 months to build and a couple months to test, and you'd have it by your peak season, whatever that might be for your industry. And if you fast forward that to cloud-based capabilities, it's something that you can write and turn on tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
and it's part of the platform at no cost.
Right.
I mean, so think about how different that is from an industry 10 years ago, even that, 5 years ago, even that you'd have to pay $1 million for a feature that's free.
Or you'd have to wait 3 months.
Free in a day.
The business would have to
or
wait 3 months for it to be enabled.
6 to 9 months and $1 million. I mean, that's the kind of benefits you get out and the flexibility you get out of these platforms.
Yeah.
So let's talk about features a little bit. We talked about virtual hold. Just to kind of give you the lay of the land of these big three platforms that we keep talking about. It's IVR, it's ACD, it's email, chat, skill-based routing, just like you get with an Avaya or Cisco or Genesys or Aspect, name your big platform.
Yeah.
It's social integration, so monitoring social channels. It's surveys. It's outbound dialing, outbound IVR, outbound SMS notifications.
It's social integration too, right? So,
And all this from a single platform, single user, and you just define what the customer experience elements, the channels you want to use, and these features are all available and ready to use. We're working with a company locally here that's going to be able to get rid of 6 platforms down to 1. So ACD, email, survey, social, IVR, services, and I can't remember the workforce management.
Quality recording. Quality
It might be even 7.
It's probably more than 6, but
Down
as they've
to
been bundled,
a platform that the business can enable. So the feature set on these, again, pre-integrated, one user to set up for all these channels. You do have to do some scripting and some channel configuration. IVRs are never easy to program.
So you have to be an engineer.
You have to understand the process of what an IVR flow is, but you don't necessarily have to be an engineer to develop an IVR flow. It helps to know some processes and helps to know how they work.
Logical flow, but these companies all have integration professional services where they'll help you get there, or partners like us that help you get there, right, as well. So when we did roughly 40 plus implementations last year in 2015, we only did the engineering, we did the experience design, we did a little bit of both, or we did all of everything. Is probably the right answer there, right?
Yep.
But the capability side, so you talked about the social piece, but social integration. So many companies are now thinking about, well, I get a post on Twitter, and Scott and I were in Indianapolis last week, and we had a kind of a bad experience at our hotel, and Scott had an issue, and he tweeted about it. And this is what I'm talking about from a capability set perspective, is being able to tweet about something, but then the call center or the support center that got that tweet, they could have turned that into an outbound call to you, right? Based on your profile, based on your loyalty number or whatever, and made that call. And then all the system would do would make sure that they got that to you and then track that information. So the next person that you called in and talked to, or if you tweeted again, or if you went on Instagram, or if you went on Facebook or whatever, it would tie all that stuff together, right?
And that's truly the benefit of having the pre-integrated piece.
Yeah.
So we run into a lot of companies that have, we got a social management tool, whether it's Revinate or name your social management tool out there. But if they call in, they have no idea that there's email pending,
Right, so you could have
There's an
multiple
SMS
work
being sent,
items that are
right.
there that you're sitting on, or you would do double or triple work. And as the
Exactly.
company that's supporting that, they may have, I wouldn't say they'd have different experience or different outcomes, but maybe different experiences or
Correct.
treatments to get there, right? So having it all together in one really gives the agent, so the employee experience around that, who's supporting us as customers or you as customers, that really gives them the power in their hands to see across the board everything, right? Cool.
So you can tell we're big proponents of cloud-based tools just because of all the things that we couldn't do from our previous lives in managing contact centers, that you were limited to capabilities that A, that didn't exist, or B, were too expensive to integrate, are now all bundled together and someone's figured it all out for us. So you don't have to do any of that. It all does it for you, which is fantastic.
But I mean, so I was asking you about, do you have to be an engineer? Most of the cloud providers out there have they get the lights on, they turn the lights on and make sure you're plugged in, right? But you still have to have some business focus and chops around, how do I want this experience or flow to go or whatever. And if you don't have those, again, that's another way that we've figured out how to be valuable in the market to our clients. Sometimes you have, and as operators, and Scott and I are operators for 20 years before we started our company, you typically don't get the, hey, if you had an open checkbook and you had all the time in the world and this, great opportunity to build what it is that you really wanted to, it's really hard to do that from scratch. So there's a portion of the operation that you know how you really want it to work, look, and feel, but there's other portions of it that may not integrate. And if you're talking about an integrated platform, how do you tie all those in so that it feels like a seamless experience? And how do you make that really proactive? Is the other part of the capability I wanted to talk about was outbound notifications. It's not just enough to be really good at reacting to the volume that comes in. These cloud capabilities are allowing companies to be proactive. I know if I recognize your phone number coming in, I can actually look and see in the order system or the service system or whatever, you're probably calling about that recent event or recent experience, or you're looking for some more help with making sure that you're getting the right pieces out of the software or the opportunity, the hardware, whatever it is that you're buying from a service or product standpoint. So that's the other part of what the capability.
Yeah, they're open. Yeah, they're open platforms, right? So you can mix it with Salesforce and create workflow between the two platforms. As a call comes in, it takes that call or goes into some workflow in, let's say, a Salesforce or a Spice CSM, some of the other cloud tools that we use and partner with. And that openness between the platforms allows you to create those experiences. Whereas in the old days, in the premise-based tools, you didn't have any open platforms.
Right.
And so to do that kind of integration meant, a $5 million price tag, not even a $1 million price tag. If you're talking about Cisco and Avaya, it was.
And if you're always working towards that better experience, and you're working on projects to get there to integrate, you're not focusing on how you can be proactive as much as you're working on how to be reactive better. Right?
Yeah, these platforms really enable you to design something new from the get-go.
Yeah.
So we do work with companies to say, you know what, I want to copy our existing experience like for like. And we've heard stories about.
Have we ever done that? I don't think
we don't do that. But we've heard stories where companies will go in and switch to this cloud. They say, well, we're not getting any benefit out of it. We said, well, what did you change in the experience now that you have this platform that's super flexible?
Copy paste, right?
Well, it's the same exact experience. So of course they're going to get the same exact results, same contact rates, same SAT, same same types of CSAT scores, et cetera. And really we recommend using the tool, creating a new experience, simplifying. A lot of companies have hundreds of skills in their existing system because they've tried to tweak it so much to try to tune it to hyper-tuned environments where, well, I've got this skill set at this priority at this stage and by this segment of customer, and really this is a chance to, when you're making a transition like this, start from scratch.
It's like spring cleaning.
It is like spring cleaning, and it's so hard to do that if you're not switching platforms. But if you are switching platforms, you could say, you know what, we're going to have 3 skills. And then everybody kind of murmurs about that for a while, and they realize, okay, I could probably get away with 4, right? Instead of 200,
or a lower number,
or as low as possible.
Cut it in half is probably the best way to start, right?
Yes.
At least cut it in half, and
so there's the benefits of the platform are the speed, flexibility, allow you to create and engineer new, more valuable experiences, value for the customer and value for the company,
right?
And integrated with your customer systems or transactional systems. That's where the benefits show up. And typically it's about 20%. Typically we can engineer something, Infinite Green can, or you can get 20% value out of a redesign, and be able to pay for the platform and then some.
So that's not just cost savings, but it could be cost savings plus
call reductions, productivity increases,
could be retention, right?
Utilization, revenue,
et
cetera.
Right. So it's not necessarily just we're the Bobs and we're cutting people, right?
Right.
It's
Even though
literally
you do get a benefit from not having as many people to maintain all this crap.
right. So, which is another benefit of the platform, right? If I know that I could take a call, work an email, or work a chat, and the systems can actually route them to me, but take me off of availability on the other ones as I'm working out on some of these, then that seems to me like I would be then as a business owner, I could leverage my team more efficiently. And make sure that they're not like overworked, but they're not underworked either. And I think underwork is even a worse case scenario than being overworked.
I mean, we've walked into companies that they've had 20 plus of just Avaya engineers on staff, 20. And if you think about why you'd need 20, well, it's because you have, let's say 60 locations, 16, it depends on how many locations you have. They split it up by location, even though you might not actually change anything in the platform more than once a year.
Are you picking on Avaya?
I'm sorry. Okay, Cisco.
Are you picking on Cisco?
Yes.
Okay.
I like to pick on Cisco and Avaya, mainly because they're
good friends
way too expensive to maintain, and that's really the industry shifting. And there's people hanging on to their old platforms because there's so much knowledge that you need to learn to maintain these systems, and people have made a career based on maintaining Cisco Avaya capabilities, Aspect, Genesis, you name it. And
but it's stable.
They want to hang on to it, but it's inflexible and it's expensive.
Okay. So inflexible, and even after you've depreciated the hardware and the expense of bringing in the box or the switch or whatever, it's still expensive to maintain to switch because it is so hard to.
If your business requires change, and most do,
right,
to keep up and to keep growing. So let's talk a little bit about, to close this out, talk a little bit about the gaps that we've seen in the market in these capabilities, because there are some gaps versus premise. Security is a huge one. People are worried about.
Is it a gap or is it an unknown?
Well, I think it depends on a company's point of view of what secure is.
Yeah.
So a lot of these platforms, I think all three of them have been HIPAA certified, and from the healthcare industry perspective, I believe.
Maybe not data, but process for sure, or maybe not process.
Voice and process
for sure. I don't know. Yeah. I think that's a good question to ask, right?
Yeah.
If you're looking at it, right, and you're into personal information or PCI compliance, more credit card, because no one wants to be the next Home Depot or Target or whatever.
Even though those are all, those weren't necessarily.
Those were all premise-based.
Premise-based.
Those were premise-based environments, but.
Or service provider-based, but.
Again, it's kind of, those are good questions to ask. If you've got a very conservative or someone that, or a business that requires you to be really clear about what you do with personal data or your customer data, you want to make sure these platforms can answer those questions. And I think like the three that we talked about, they have a very specific point of view. They have a path on which their product roadmap works or they're getting to, so that they can answer PCI, HIPAA, personal information, all of the major potential question marks that a client may have.
Yeah, and there's really three ways to secure these capabilities. One is I'm just going to use password authentication and user authentication directly to the internet. I'm going to find these services right through the internet. Mm-hmm. The second is to create dedicated circuit to their hosting capability, whether it's on-prem somewhere else. And that's a security process. The third that Innin has moved to is AWS. So Innin is actually, or Internet Intelligence, their new Pure Cloud Now product uses Amazon Web Services. And I actually looked at
moving towards that,
which is Incontact is moving that direction too. And so your actual services are hosted by Amazon Web Services, which I think is probably one of the most secure places you could store data and call processes. And I looked on the government certification site this morning, and AWS is government certified.
On the ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think security, I think people are learning that security is a facet that's different. You just have to manage it differently than you do premise-based equipment. You can't look at it as just users on your network anymore. You've got
And locked rooms with servers.
right. It's like securing Salesforce, and a lot of companies have Salesforce in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
So it's user security and network-based security. And so one of the things that we've learned too is companies have to have a good solid understanding of network security and how to create and secure networks outside of your own. We've run into companies that don't necessarily have that level of skill on their team, and they have to go get it from somewhere before we can move down this path, because it definitely switches your IT capability set from prem-based management and box management to network and security, and that's where the focus needs to shift to be successful here. But it's not a tough switch. You just you have to be deliberate about it.
The providers that we've worked with and that we partner with right now, they all have very strong.
They do.
Engineer level. They can help you get there, right? If you have a question about that or want to sit on a call and just kind of work through, like, what if we were to move to the cloud on your platform? What would the security issue, or what would the security kind of warm and fuzzy look like, right? How do you make me feel good as a client that you've got my customers' personal information and best interest in mind? And I think that's worth even talking to them about, because that might be what drives your organization to stay premise-based, right? And as we talked about with a couple of big retailers, right, that have come out with PR nightmares, right, around this, it's not necessarily a cloud issue, but it's something that you could answer for everything, and it would give you a good understanding of how these platforms are set up.
Yep. The other thing that I think is still a gap, there's two actually. One is they don't have really good PBX integration. So if you think about a phone system, so your traditional phone system with an extension, an office phone
For voicemail.
For voicemail that people don't really use anymore anyway. But they don't include those in their products. They don't have them integrated. They might have a partner that does them separately. And to me, there's one product on the market that's solving for that. It's not ready for prime time yet, but eventually I think they're going to go there. So all your phone systems, whether it's a simple desk phone, a conference phone,
in a call center role within your company,
right,
but you have a need for a desk phone that you do conference calls on, or you take voicemail on it, or call out on, right?
Yeah. So, but think about, when's the last time you were at your desk and you started, placing calls out on your desk phone, other than maybe joining conference calls, which you could do right through your PC. But you traditionally don't talk to your suppliers, providers. It's usually on your phone, on your mobile. And so we see a lot of companies even tossing out their phones. Like, we don't even need one. We did a visit to Dropbox to talk to them about some business, and they didn't have phones in their operation. And they had call centers in multiple locations and support in India, and it was all just PC-based communications. So there's ways to do it without a traditional PBX. I think a traditional PBX is a waste of money these days, but there are some businesses where a phone-based, extension-based kind of piece of hardware might be important, but it's an old behavior. We did a survey at one customer, it was a board of kind of the leadership team around the table, and they were investing in a PBX and call center capabilities. I said, why would you need to invest in a PBX? They have their own phone system already that they use to make phone calls. And so we pulled the room. We said, who made or took a phone call from their desk phone this week? And I think it was a Friday.
And
one person raised their hands. So if you think about, everybody else uses their mobile phone. So if you think about that need of what I call unified communications, you don't necessarily need unified communications with a piece of hardware anymore. You just need communications via your whatever device you're using, whether that's PC, a tablet, a mobile device, et cetera. So I think that traditional desk phone.
So is that a gap?
Circling back. So I think when you look at companies that are smaller that say, well, I have to have, if I'm replacing a phone system, I have to have desk phone features for people that are not call center. And so smaller companies, it's a gap that these companies can't provide a solution that's integrated. In other words, John Bloom can sign in and be a call center user for the first half of the day, but I just wanted to do an extension-based user. I could dial them on, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the afternoon. And companies want that. And we see it as a gap. The industry might not as much, but it's something to keep in mind that if it impacts your old phone system world and that phone system hardware, something you want to check into is, we're going to have to maintain 2 platforms now, one in the cloud for call center and one locally for
Or on the reverse
for
of that,
desk phone.
if you're enabling through some of these cloud capabilities to do that, there are companies that have both, to your point, Scott, the business phone user and the call center all integrated into
Right.
one, or they have a very seamless process around that, or partner with the right level. So it's just a good question to ask, because when you're enabling or bringing up out of the premise-based environment into the cloud for your call center, typically there are others that leverage that capability too that may not be a part of that. So back office and some of those other things. So anyway, it's a good question to ask, I think. The other thing I think that's a gap right now is most of the large providers and smaller and up and coming providers really wait or haven't vetted out their reporting very well.
Yep.
Right. So if you think about probably the people that might be watching this or could leverage some information off of this, you always want to be able to tell that one version of the truth story out of, well, I got this amount of calls, emails, chats, social interactions, web hits, etc. And this is what I did with them, and this is what they resulted in. And this is how much it cost, this is how much we drove in revenue, and this is what our customer sat or our satisfaction numbers were out of them, and yada, 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 right? So how do you pull all of that information into one system? So we talked about being the capability platform with all of that stuff in one, but then how do you report on it? And most companies typically that are in that premise-based environment, they don't have one report that's wrapped up into one that gives them visibility at the right level.
Or over time, they've built a process to get the data from this platform, the data from this platform, the data from this platform, and keep counting. And they have some level of specificity around how that all works together.
Right.
And
they have to manipulate,
and they have to manipulate and stage and sequence it, and they never get it quite. Right. And what happens when we've seen this at large companies, what happens is the data that you see in your dashboard report is different from the data in my dashboard report. So nothing ticks and ties when you start doing that, and that's where you run into trouble. So I think
another place we've added a lot of value for organizations is, well, we know that you're get the like for like or better capability on the install on the platform. But let's talk about at the end, let's do requirements for reporting up front in the process rather than as a afterthought down the road. And Dana and our data services practice, we've really had a lot of success in that and building some of those kind of, I'll call it the plumbing of getting all of those disparate information sources pulled together so that you can have one report and one dimension.
Yeah.
Or multi-dimension reporting into one from platforms like this very quickly versus having to go to all these individual sources and make them and figure out how to translate all of those into one.
The good thing is the data is there in one platform.
Yeah.
I think where the gap is they haven't figured out how to create a very easy way to access it all, to dashboard it all, in ways operators like us and yourselves who are watching might want to use it. And I think that's where we've helped. We've created products that help companies do that.
Yeah, we created a software application that pulls all of those disparate data sources together, and it's called Greenline. And what it is it takes all of that financial, the CSAT, the call, email, chat, all of that information, brings it together, normalizes it out so that you can report on it on a consistent basis. And you don't have to buy another tool to do that. Right. So if you use Excel predominantly and PowerPoint to present your numbers, you can still do that. If you use a BI tool, ClickView, Tableau, some of the other big, more aggregators and visualization tools, you can do that as well. So this is kind of that, we call it the non-sexy plumbing underneath the visualization. And really it just organizes and gets the data layer set so that you can get good reporting out of it. And I think that's one thing that the providers that we've talked to, they're in various stages of development within that, but we're doing a lot of translation services for our clients within that so that they don't have to wait for the providers to get there. And actually the providers are saying, hey, how do you help us get there faster too? So it's a good give take, but we see that as a very valuable opportunity for us to add value in the process, but it is a gap today.
So that's what we had to talk about today. I don't think we had anything else on our notes that we wanted to talk to you about, but
Is it cloudy enough?
Is it cloudy outside?
It's cloudy.
I've got my Easter green on, so I'm all bright and fancy for Easter.
I went old school North Stars today.
That is old school.
Norm Green. Bad deal.
Norm Greedy.
Norm Greedy, yeah.
All
So,
right.
hey, well, we appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. Stream of consciousness is kind of what we are and what we're about. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to give us a shout. You've got our channel. We're gonna do a number of these things. We'll probably come back around on different capabilities, but we wanted to start this year off with, hey, what's the cloud and why is everyone talking about it? And would people stop talking about the cloud? I don't think so. I think it's part of the future
This is where it's
of
going.
how business goes. And Scott and I our company is not doing premise-based
Anything.
development right now. We help companies optimize their process. We help them optimize their reporting. But
Customer
we're really
experience.
not bringing forward, hey, you should really go into the premise environment for this particular capability. We've only seen benefit in going to the cloud from a nimble, being able to drive the right customer experience to a cost benefit down the road or immediately as you go, in the ability to flex up, flex down, bring in what you want at any given time, turn it on, turn it off, and really get the right level of management. And it puts the power into the business's hands so that your IT organization can do the things that they really need to be specific about on the technical side. And I think that's where the benefit organizationally really happens too, right? Is, man, if as a business owner, if I could do half the things that some of these cloud platforms enable today, back when I was doing them, I would still be in one of those call centers. But I really enjoy, and I think Scott and I really enjoy with the rest of the Infinite Green team, being able to create that eye-opening experience for our clients that they're able to leverage that same benefit for it. And we'd love to help get you there as well. So if you have any questions, let us know. Give us a shout and stay tuned for our next Green Talk. Is it going to be next month?
It's always the last, always, I shouldn't say that because we haven't had it for a while, but it's scheduled to be on the last Friday of the month at noon Central Time.
Well, now it's out in the webosphere, so.
I said that on the last one that we
Yeah.
didn't follow up with. But another event that we have coming up, just to plug it, is we've got on May 19th, John and I are going to be smoking some ribs, some brisket, some pulled
You better
pork.
say that. We're doing meat, barbecued meat, right? We're not smoking hookah.
No.
But no.
So we're going to have an event here at the office. Starts at 4 p.m. Central on May 19th. It's called Q's Brews and Views. We're going to have local beers. John and I are going to be chefs for the day, and we're going to be talking about these capabilities and demoing these capabilities. So if you're in town, come on down May 19th at 4 p.m. If you're out of town, you want to travel, come to Minneapolis. We'll love to talk to you about these capabilities and what the potential is and what the value is for your company.
Doors always open. 708 First Street, Minneapolis, 55401. If you know where Acme Comedy Club is, we're 2 floors up. And come sit down and hang out with us. We'd love to have you. So thanks. Have a good Friday. Have a good holiday weekend, and we'll talk to you next month.
Thanks, everyone.